Welcome back to the internet once again. I'm going to be reading some petty revenge stories today. So this first story is called Free Weed Not Good Enough. So I used to grow my own weed. When it was all done curing, I'd call some friends over to sample the new stuff. One of my friends brought his brother over and we all got pretty baked. At some point the brother asked me for some of the weed that I grew, and for some reason I actually gave him some. When I handed it over to him, he started to inspect it and says, "This looks like it needs to be cured longer." It was fine. I asked to see it, and when he handed it over, I also inspected it and said, "You're right," and put it back in my jar. My friend just looked at his brother and called him a dummy. Don't rip on free weed, knucklehead. Hey, beggars can't be choosers. This one's called How I Took Revenge on an Old Bully by Killing Him with Kindness. So this is a story about how I humbled one of my former bullies. It made me feel really good to stand up for myself and to take some petty revenge. So entering the 6th grade, I was short and really skinny and light, and a year younger than everyone due to the fact that I had skipped a grade. There were a couple of kids who bullied me that year, but one of them was the worst of all. Let's call him the Kid. The Kid had a reputation around the school for being terrible and not a very bright person. He was held back 3 times, but none of the teachers wanted to mess with someone who was 2 feet taller than them. He was very violent, and one time picked me up and smashed my skull into the ground, making it bleed and nearly concussing me. These incidents continued until the end of the year, and 6th grade ended up being my least favorite year of school ever. After 6th grade, I moved schools to a charter school, where I made new friends who cared about me, and I lost contact with the bullies from the old school. Fast forward 3 years and I've gotten pretty strong. I'm on the competitive rock climbing team for my local rock gym. I have practices about every other day, and I usually meet some great people as the atmosphere around the gym is really positive. Today, as you would never guess, the Kid from my old school came to try out climbing for his first time ever. You could tell that the Kid hadn't changed, and he expected to be the best out of anybody, and walked around with an aura of arrogance surrounding him. He started climbing, and was clearly struggling on some easy climbs. Then when he did complete them, he was rubbing it into everyone around him, and disrupting the usual positive atmosphere of the gym. So here's the petty revenge. The Kid was about to start climbing when I sat next to him. He looked over and was startled to see me. He seemed to ignore it, and then started climbing on something way too hard for his skill level. But I started encouraging him really enthusiastically, and when he fell pretty early on I said, "You'll get it next time, dude." I don't know what about that made him mad, but he said aggressively, "Can you do it, punk?" So I jumped on a problem about 6 difficulty grades harder than what he was trying, and completed it immediately. He became really upset and then left the gym shortly after. I don't think that he will be coming back to this rock gym again. Hey, it's always fun to get back at somebody just by showing them up. Bullies are usually the most fun to get revenge on. So this one's called I Published a Poem About My Ex in a Literary Magazine He'd Been Trying to Get Into for Years. So we were both in high school, and at the end of the relationship he told me he was just in it for the sex, that he didn't really mean any of it, and that I obviously just wanted him because I was horny. He then went and had a hot and heavy makeout session with my best friend and came back and told me I was a bad kisser compared to her. Yeah, he was a jerk. Well, flashback to a few months previous, I was angry at him because he was being really hot and cold, and so I wrote an angry poem about him. The magazine he had been trying to get into had a website, and would publish poems based off of popularity on the website. He had gotten me to join a few months previous, and I had only had a few poems up. I decided against posting it because it would be too mean. Well, after he had pulled that stunt, I decided to get a little revenge. So I posted the poem, and suddenly it was getting a lot of popularity, and I get a notification from the magazine saying they wanted to publish it. So what was the first thing I did? Messaged him that I got published in this magazine. He got really excited for me and congratulated me, until he read the poem. Several million people have read the poem in the magazine, and to this day, he still hasn't gotten published. Man, that's gotta sting. But again, that feels pretty good to be on this end of the revenge. So this one is called Spreading Education on a Plane. So several months ago, I was in a very crowded flight, but at least I had the window seat, where there were usually 2 seats next to me, middle seat and aisle seat, both full. I always had sympathy for the guy stuck in the middle seat of the plane. It sucks, so I don't use the armrest, and I try to lean into the little gap of the space offered by the window. I'm fairly short, so I don't mind keeping my legs a little to the side too, basically making sure the middle seat guy gets all their space. I've done this a dozen times before, and the person stuck in the middle has always stuck to their space. I've even been thanked for it. The middle seat guy settled in, pulled out a pencil and an oversized pad of paper and started writing. One hand steadying the pad of paper, one hand writing, no problem there. But in the process, he stuck his elbow past the armrest. Annoying, but hey, it's the middle seat, and he was a tall guy. I figured I could just move a little more to the window area and avoid his elbow. As we get in the air, he settles in, puts the tray down as a writing surface, and spreads his legs wide. Really wide. The type of spread where his knees well past the boundary of the armrest, and is right against my leg. When he scratched the side of his leg, I felt his fingers, which was not okay. Particularly since my legs are together and next to the wall on the plane. I try a few tactics. I sit up more, fidget a bit, and push back slightly, just enough to remind him I'm there. I figure maybe he's distracted with his writing, not paying attention. Usually this kind of thing works. Instead, he shifts in a way that puts the top corner of the big pad of paper just a little into my area. It's not touching me, but now he's taking up just a little more of my space. Almost like he's trying to get me to see what he's writing. So, sure, I look. He has very tidy handwriting, so I can quickly see that the page is covered with quotes from the Bible and paragraphs about avoiding temptation and not going into lustful things. Now, I have a live and let live view when it comes to religion. I have no problem with anyone's religious beliefs when they don't cause any trouble. If he had written in his own space, I would have happily just kept browsing on my phone, enjoying the plane's Wi-Fi. But with him crowding me that much, with his legs against mine, with his elbows creeping past the armrest again, I was done. I hunted through videos online. I needed one with bright colors and big letters, with good pictures and no sound required. Once found, I made my screen as bright as possible and played the video on my lap. In my own space, but close to where his legs were leaning against mine, right in the field of his vision. I think he must have looked over right when a cartoonish devil appeared, complete with Satanism displayed in large letters, followed by pictures of pentagrams and various historic images of the devil. Because that's when the pressure finally left my leg and his elbow found its way back into his own space. It was rather educational video actually, and I enjoyed learning a bit about different types of Satanism, history, and misconceptions about it that day. But more than that, I really enjoyed seeing the guy continue to glance over and try to move as far from me as possible for the rest of the flight. That's kind of a funny way to get your own space back, is just make people not want to be close to you. Unfortunately, a lot of people do this method unintentionally, and they're just a little bit physically repulsive. And to the final story of today, it's called Offer Me a 60-cent Wage, I'll Force You to Raise Wages or People Have a New Job. So coming up on 3 years, I just hit 5 years experience in CNC machining. 3 of 5 were involved in machine setups. I applied for every single opening within my company for the promotion, strictly setting up and testing machines. Months with no luck. You could only apply through the online web portal. I decided to just do an old-fashioned way and drop off resumes when the portal was down. I started applying outside the company as well. I was getting calls now and interviews, something fishy. I did my interviews and nailed a bunch, then nothing for weeks. No biggie, I'm assuming it's something to do with the intercompany and policies. I had an unofficial offer from one company. They told me expect salary and details. Just needed to figure out HR stuff. Turns out the position was for someone on long-term disability, needed to wait for the diagnosis of return to work if any. I run into a family friend who worked at one of the places I applied to. Lo and behold, they sent an offer. My HR department said no, you can't have him. I went red. The following workday I went right to HR, asking why I was being blocked. They claimed nothing of the sort. I played it up a bit. I asked my HR manager if they knew X company's HR manager. They said nervously yes. I asked them why my uncle would lie to me. They were caught dead to rights, and in serious crap. I got asked to come back later on. A couple days later, I get an offer from my current company, a raise for 60 cents to the next position. I immediately said that's not enough. I got that's what we can afford in offering. Turned that down like a hot potato and they were shell-shocked. Plant manager and HR manager's jaws hit the floor. Put my notice in a few days later. I get hired into the company I was talking to for a significant raise. It was much less work, but way more responsibility. To mess with my old company. I found everyone I thought was decent at their job, got them to apply where I was. Out of 7 people, 5 got offers, and 3 took the job. The 2 that didn't take the job took the offer back and demanded a lot. I thought it was a snaky thing, but they got ahead in their careers. So, the company tried to give you a 60-cent raise, and it cost them 3 employees and forced them to spend another $20 an hour on 2 other people. Well, it's good that sometimes employees can stand up to their employers because, you know, I think one of the things a lot of people say is wrong with capitalism is that bosses can take advantage of their workers. But I think you can see right here that as long as the employees are just as assertive, they can negotiate a good wage and get a reasonable position. Anyways, that does it for the Petty Revenge stories. Hopefully the new background video thing isn't too distracting for you. But I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching.